One day I was driving to work, and the radio station that I always listen to, the radio station that I'm on, also happens to cover our local college football team, my alma mater. And so there was a sports report, and they tell about the Major League playoffs, and then they have what happened in the Monday night football game the night before. And then they mentioned that my favorite team had just landed this star football player who was a high school student who had verbally committed to come play for my favorite college football team, my alma mater. So I thought, okay, that's kind of cool, that's kind of interesting. And then the sportscaster said, "You'll not believe the backstory behind this young man." As it turned out, this star high school player lived in Compton, California, south central LA, tough area, riddled with gang violence. And this young man lived in a home with a single mom and 5 or 6 brothers and sisters, one of whom had been murdered in a drive-by shooting. Very, very tough environment. Well, his mother didn't want to be on public assistance, so she worked 4 part-time jobs. 4 part-time jobs, and that meant that she was really busy, right? And there's something you have to know. If you're a college football coach who's trying to recruit a star high school player to your university football team, you must win over the mom. Moms are everything. How many of you are moms? Okay, how many of you moms have kids who are in, soon will be, or have been in college? I think you would want to have a little something to do with the say of where they go to school, right? And I bet you did for those of you who've had students to go there. You've got to win over the mom. But this lady had 4 jobs, so they could not reach her. Well, as it turns out, one of her jobs was as a city bus driver in Los Angeles. The coaches traveled to LA, somehow or another figured out this woman's bus route. They stood at a bus stop. She pulled up. They entered. Hopefully they paid the fare. They introduced themselves and then sat in the front row and worked her, sold her, built a relationship with her for 4 or 5 hours. She eventually dropped them back off where she had found them, and at that point, the deal was done. She said, "My son will come play for you." And as a fan of my alma mater, my first thought when I heard that story was, oh my God, that is one of the coolest things I ever heard. And I was so proud of the coaches of my alma mater for doing so much to recruit a star athlete to our school. And it was almost kind of a buzz. But then I started to get this very different feeling. Another feeling came over me like a wave, and that was a feeling of guilt. I started to feel kind of guilty because I thought to myself, geez, for my job, would I be willing to travel to LA and ride around on a bus for 5 hours trying to sell something to the driver? And my answer was, gosh, I don't know. Would I do that? For just one client, would I do that? Maybe, maybe I wouldn't. And then I got to start thinking about how hard these football coaches really work. Now, granted, it's worth it. They make a lot of money. Anyone know who the highest paid football coach in America is? In the college level? Nick Saban, yeah, at the University of Alabama, Crimson Tide, won all sorts of national championships lately. The man makes more than $5 million a year to coach guys to go run into each other on a football field. A lot of money. But the stakes are high. The stakes are high. If you are the coach of a major college football team, the odds are that you are making at least $2 million, almost as much as a typical real estate agent makes. So there's big stakes here and big pressure, and these stadiums have 90 to 100,000 people in them, and the television ratings of college football are the #2 highest television ratings of any sport behind only professional football. Big, big stakes, and so they're under all this pressure. And the thought I had, ladies and gentlemen, was, what if I sold real estate and recruited agents the way football coaches recruited star players? Because I work in a competitive environment. The stakes are high for me, as they are for all of you. What if I worked the way they worked? And what if all of us did? What if all of us in any profession recruited and sold the way they do? And so in order to find out how they did it, I started interviewing all of these coaches. And a lot of the big-name current coaches didn't want to talk. Oh, a few assistant coaches did. And I did interview 2 head coaches that were currently practicing football coaching at the time, but since they've both been fired, I don't think there's any correlation there. But I wasn't getting enough. So then I decided, you know what the best group would be, the people I should talk to? The old guys. the guys who had won a lot of football games and were national champions and had retired. Because let's face it, does anyone tell stories more than retired guys? No one. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go after these guys. And I interviewed people like Barry Switzer, who coached at Oklahoma, and Tom Osborne from Nebraska, and Philip Fulmer in Tennessee, and John Cooper, Ohio State and Arizona State, and Jim Don in Georgia, and Gary Barnett from Northwestern in Colorado, and R.C. Slocum from Texas A&M, and many, many others. And I asked all of those coaches, what's the secret? What's the secret to good selling? What's the secret to good recruiting?